thought it might be nice to make a video showing what my process looks like every week for my comic. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I'm doing and thinking as we go along, so without further ado, let's get to it. I'm starting here with what I think is probably the easiest panel on this page. I like to start with the easiest panel and work my way up to whatever I think is the most difficult so that I feel more accomplished and it's easier for me to go along knowing that I already have so much of the page behind me. This page contains a lot of hands, so you'll see throughout the video me drawing the hands over and over again because I kind of still struggle with them, but I think it turned out okay in the end. I took lots of reference photos of my own hands so that I would have a lot to look back and forth at to make sure that it looked okay. With this panel, I struggled a little bit with the forearm connected to the hand, but you'll see I think it looks all right in the end after a couple of tries. I think that's one of the best things about digital art is you can try over and over and over again on the same document and you're not wasting any paper or anything, so you don't have to be afraid to make mistakes. This page is very reflective in that a lot of the characters are thinking about the past. So I wanted to do close-ups of Meldris's hands interacting with things on her desk and interacting with spells because I thought it looked kind of moody. I brought in a reference from the previous page to this one here so that I could try to keep the same mood from page to page and stay consistent. Because in the end, all of the pages are going to be together side by side, so I want to make sure that they flow. Okay. Originally for this panel, I had an idea that I was going to take the droplets on the window and create shadows on Meldris and her desk from the droplets since the light's coming from outside of the window, but I ran out of time to put that in there, but that would have been really nice. The comic takes me 4 days to make a page, so I spend 2 days sketching, 1 day lining, and 1 day coloring. So I work relatively slowly, but hopefully with time I will get faster and more efficient at what I do. This is probably my favorite panel on the page just because it's so happy and peaceful, even though, as you can see here, I had such a hard time with drawing Fabe in profile. Drawing people in profile and drawing hands are definitely two areas where I struggle the most, but that's okay. The kids are really cute here. I looked up a lot of photos of children playing with bubbles and things in like their yard to get inspiration for this page because I wanted it to be really happy since a lot of the pages before this one and a few of the pages after this one are kind of moody and sad and bittersweet. I wanted to have a panel that was a little bit of a break from all that and thought it might be nice to have Fabe and her classmates hanging out in a field. You can see that I'm making notes for myself because the comic takes 4 days. Sometimes from day to day I forget ideas that I had the previous day, or I look at my sketch and I'm like, where was I going with that? So I make a layer on top of everything that holds all of my notes so that I can write it down as soon as I think of it and reference it the next day. Here I've taken the sketch away from Photoshop and into Clip Studio Paint so that I can line it. Why I work in 2 programs, I don't know. It's probably one of the worst things about my process is going back and forth between 2 programs, but I just haven't fully switched over to Clip Studio Paint yet. I'm still very comfortable with Photoshop, but they're both great programs. So eventually I'll just have the one. I went a little overboard with the hair here blowing in the wind because it was really fun. Sometimes I just like drawing hair for the sake of it, even if it doesn't make sense. It's just such a relaxing thing to draw. I looked at a bunch of animated movies that had really nice like rolling hills and stuff for this this panel specifically because I'm more of a character artist than a background artist. So backgrounds have been something that the comic has forced me to try to work on. And so I was trying to get inspiration from artists who are really, really good at backgrounds. And I hope some of that seeped into my work here. You can see me just drawing things here and then resizing them to fit. The line art stage is really relaxing to me. Some people don't really like line art, some people really like it. For me, I look forward to line art days. They're always on Wednesday, by the way, if you're ever wondering. My schedule, Mondays and Tuesdays are sketch days, Wednesday's line day, and Thursday's color day. And I always look forward to Wednesdays because it means I can put on a good movie or some nice music. All the difficult thinking has already been done on Monday and Tuesday with coming up with the dialogue and the composition of the page and then taking time to sketch it out. On line days, I can just focus on taking all the effort that I've already put into the page and making it a reality. The difficult part with line art, and I'm sure a lot of artists can attest to this, is making sure that your line art has the same emotion and flow and feel that your sketch does, because you're a little bit more carefree with your sketch than you are with your line art is a bit more rigid, so it's hard to translate the atmosphere of the sketch over to line art sometimes, and a lot of artists lament that. So you can, if you see the blinking here going on, that's me turning the sketch layer on and off so that I can look at the line art by itself and make sure that I'm constantly checking to see if my lines are giving off the same feel as the sketch conveys. And then I use the select tool when I'm done lining a panel. I'll use the select wand on the outside of the line art, and then I'll invert the selection, and on a layer below that I fill it in with this gray color to differentiate the foreground from the background, because it just makes lining the background easier for me. That way I can kind of cheat and draw behind the characters, and it doesn't have to be perfect and line up perfectly, and it makes the process a little bit faster. I really love this last panel, especially the way the spell kind of curves around the character. People who have known me for a long time will know that I kind of have a fondness for swirly things. So the way that it curves is just really pleasing to me, and I like that it mirrors the way that I've cut that panel from the others. Here I'm laying in flats and putting in just like simple gradients, like making the tips of her fingers darker and the tips of her ears. I really love Mel's color palette. She's such a nice character to paint week after week after week because she's all of my favorite colors in one. Laying in the flats can take a little bit of time because I'm working with the midtones here. So I want to find the color that is neither the lightest part of the character or the darkest part. I need something that I can make add both highlights to and shadows to. And sometimes that takes a little bit of mixing and matching to make something that is pleasing and works really well as a midtone. So sometimes I like to put on like soothing music during this part of the process, or maybe I'll find like a funny video on YouTube. Here I didn't want to hand draw the letter over and over and over again in these panels, so I took a previous page that I drew her letter on, and to make it accurate for each panel I put it on multiply and warped it to fit the page and just traced over it so that it would look the same in every panel. To make wood, you can see here I'm coloring in a base color for the wood, and then I add in a gradient to give it a little bit of dimension. And then I put a multiply layer on top of it and drop the opacity down a little bit and draw in just like a wood grain, and I think it looks really swirly and pretty and night elven. Now we've started on the shadows, and I start with the shadows first because it helps me figure out where the light's coming from, and it helps give a little bit of form to the characters. And I feel like it just makes it easier for me to put in the highlights later. It doesn't really matter which way you do it though. Both ways are good. I just personally like starting with my shadows first. And as you can see here, I'm using this kind of royal blue color. It's a very rich color. I like using very vibrant shadows. I think it helps my work look the way that it does. That seems like a really obvious statement, but I just really like color. So using vibrant colors even in my shadows, I feel like makes it feel very me, and it's something I really like to do. To make this glass, I created a new layer, filled it in with a bluish tone, and then I erased the centers of it to have it be a little bit more transparent in one area than the other, so it kind of gave the illusion of being glass. And I love just that we're getting to peek into Mel's world here. It's a fun thing of getting to make your own comic and tell your stories, as you can create the world as you see it and share it with people. And whatever you can imagine, you can create. I added some spell effects to that bottom panel because I felt like just having the leaves swirling around her was a little bit flat and needed some interest. I decided to color this panel and put in its flats separately than the others, which usually I do the whole page at one time. But because this particular panel was a completely different mood, feel, and coloration than the other panels, I kind of wanted to save it until last so that I could focus on it separately and give it the attention it deserved. So the bottom half of the page is rich, dark purples and blues and magentas, and then this upper panel is very green and yellow and bright, and I wanted them to be conflicting with each other a little bit. I felt like that would add to the bittersweet feeling because there's so many emotions going on in this part of the story. Here I'm adding some details on the butterflies, which is really fun. I'm not gonna lie, this was a really fun page to do in general. Not every week is super exciting. Some pages I have a lot of fun with because I can be more artsy with them, and some of them are more dialogue heavy, and it's a little harder to make them interesting, but I'm always trying to look for ways to learn how to make mundane things in the comic interesting. I think that's something I really want to focus on and work on, but some weeks just stand out as particularly really interesting and fun and exciting, and this one was one of them. I think my favorite page so far, if you've seen the comic, is probably the page where Fabe and Mel are going through the dream portal, or the portal in the Dream Grove to Grizzly Hills for the first time. I really like that page. Here you can see me struggling with some clouds. I haven't spent a lot of time working on ways to draw clouds, so I was experimenting here a little bit. Like I mentioned before, the comic has kind of forced me to address all of the weakest points in my art, and I'm really grateful for that because it has given me an excuse to study and learn new things, and I really like that. So here I put like a gray layer on top of everything just so I'm not distracted by all the colors of the page, and I'm putting in the words, and that's pretty much about it. At this point, I'm just wrapping up and looking at the page and making sure that I love how it turned out, and I love how this one turned out. And I had a great time. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this video about my process of how I make the comic, and I hope to make more voiceover videos for you soon. Have a great week. See you later.